I'd like to start with a possibly provocative assertion that organised religion is one of the single greatest global threats to human rights, especially the human rights of women and lesbian, gay, bisexual and transgender people. In my analysis, from the evidence I've seen, organised religion invariably defends the traditions and laws and values of patriarchy and heterosexism. And when it comes to human rights, these issues of gender and sexuality are the lightning rod issues. There can be a general consensus around opposition to terrorism or the rights of people to practice their faith. But when it comes to issues of gender and sexuality, time and time again, even in the United Nations, we see a majority of states voting against equality in favour of maintained discrimination. I say organised religion as distinct from individual people of faith. I'm talking about faith organisations as institutions, but I acknowledge absolutely that there are many good people in all faiths. Indeed, my own human rights work is inspired by some notable people of faith. Mohandas Gandhi, Martin Luther King, Oscar Romero, Dorothy Day, Daniel and Philip Berrigan. These were good people of faith who stood for human rights. They stood against social injustice. And I salute them. But overall, I think, sadly, organised religion has not followed their values and their ideals. Organised religion is right now organising to deny people their human rights. If we take a look at organised religion around the world, take Christian organisations. In the United States, they are spearheading the fight to deny women reproductive rights, in particularly the right to choose to have an abortion. They are leading the fight to block marriage equality. They oppose sex education and relationship education in schools and the provision of condoms to prevent the spread of HIV and other sexually transmitted infections. In Nigeria, Christian churches are deeply implicated in the hounding of so-called witches, mostly women and young children who are beaten to within an inch of their life because it's believed they are possessed by the devil. This is being orchestrated, in some cases, by the Anglican Church in Nigeria. They've also led the recent attempts to promote a bill which would ban all gay organisations, events, and advocacy. In Uganda, it's Christian extremists who have pushed the so-called anti-homosexuality bill, which would introduce the death penalty for repeat homosexual offenders. In Russia, it is the Orthodox Church which provides the ideological and religious underpinning for President Putin's drift to tyranny and autocracy. But of course, it's not just Christians. Judaist fundamentalists in Israel, for example, they are the ones who are blocking a just peace with the Palestinian people, using their leverage in parliament to hold successive governments to ransom. They've also, as you know, recently tried to stop, but been defeated, in women being allowed to pray at the Wailing Wall. They've also sought to ban LGBT pride parades. This is the reality of extreme organised religion. In Islamic states, institutions and governments in countries like Iran, Saudi Arabia and Syria often persecute fellow Muslims, Muslims who don't conform to their particular interpretation of Islam. in particular Muslim minorities, the Ahmadiyya and Sufi Muslims, plus, of course, persecuting people of other faiths. In Pakistan, widespread persecution by organized Islamic institutions of Christians, Baha'is, and others. Indeed, if we take a look at the global picture, contrary to many people's perception, it is Christians who are the faith group that suffers the single greatest global persecution. If any of you are familiar with what is happening in Pakistan, the bombing of churches, the murder of Christian believers in their own homes, the firebombing of their shops and churches, these things are happening in the name of organized religion. And it's for all these reasons that I am a secularist. I believe in a separation of religion from the state. Secularism is not, as often misunderstood, anti-clericalism or anti-religious. It's simply saying that the state and religion should be separate, that no religion should have a privileged position with regard to the state and its policy. It's about creating a level playing field for all faiths and for none. So there's no privileged legal status for any religion. And I think that's a very good principle. It is the surest guarantee of religious freedom. Secularism guarantees religious freedom, because wherever in the world the state and religion go hand in hand, we nearly always find the persecution of people of other faiths. So in Iran, which is a Shia-dominated state, we see widespread persecution of Sunni Muslims. In Iraq, under Saddam Hussein, Sunni Muslims had the whip hand. Now the Shia Muslims are dominant and the Sunnis are suffering. So it is really, really important for the rights and freedoms of all people of faith, as well as people of no faith, that there is a separation between religion and the state. Mention has been made of the role of the unelected, appointed bishops in our own House of Lords. Far from wishing to see this principle extended to other faiths, I don't believe that any clerics should be sitting in our democratic legislature, or indeed anybody by appointment. If bishops or others wish to stand for election, that's fine. If they get elected, I will accept that. But it surely is a great anomaly that Britain is one of only 2 countries in the world where clerics sit as of right in the legislature. The other country, of course, being Iran. I mentioned in my rather impolite outburst, for which I apologize, about the Global Peace and Unity Conference coming up later this month. I've got to say there are many fine speakers at this event. I have no objection to most of them. But as far as I can ascertain, there are 5 speakers who are on record as saying that people should be killed, murdered, which is a criminal offense. People should be killed if they are gay, if they are unchaste women, and if they are insufficiently devout Muslims, or if they turn away from the Muslim faith. 5 of these speakers have committed the criminal offense of incitement and solicitation to murder. Yet they are on the platform, and quite a number of establishment political figures will be speaking at that conference. These 5 speakers are more extreme than even the British National Party. Yet that conference is officially sponsored by the Metropolitan Police and by the City of London Police. Can you believe it? Absolutely outrageous. They would never sponsor a conference calling for the killing of Jews or Muslims, or where speakers at a conference had called for the killing of Jews or Muslims, but they're prepared to sponsor a conference where some of the speakers, 5 of the speakers, have advocated killing the gay people, unchaste women, and Muslims who turn away from their faith. I, of course, am not solely concerned with gay rights. I advocate and campaign on a wide range of human rights issues. But I think it's useful to look at the program of gay law reform in Britain over the last decade or so as a microcosm, as an example of the problems we sometimes face when it comes to organized religion. Since 1999, progressively, every single major legal discrimination against LGBT people has been repealed. One of the fastest, most successful law reform campaigns, not only in British history, but I think in world history. In 1999, Britain had by volume the largest number of anti-gay laws of any country on earth. Some of those laws dated back to 1533, in the time of King Henry VIII. The same law that sent Oscar Wilde to prison in 1895 was only repealed in 2003. But on those issues and every other gay law reform issue, organized religion, the dominant forces in the Anglican, Catholic, and Muslim faiths, organized and campaigned vociferously to maintain discrimination. They opposed an equal age of consent. They opposed lifting the ban on gay people serving in the armed forces. They opposed the right of same-sex couples to foster and adopt children. They opposed civil partnerships. They opposed legislation to protect LGBT people against discrimination in the workplace. They opposed the repeal of Section 28. They opposed the ending of the criminalization of homosexuality in Britain, which was only finally legislated in 2003. On all those issues, the Anglican and Catholic churches and the main Muslim organizations campaigned to retain discrimination. Many of you will be familiar with the recent debate over same-sex marriage. They opposed that as well. We were talking about civil marriage, but they insisted that they, as faith organizations, should be able to dictate and block civil marriages in register offices. No one was proposing that any faith organization be forced to conduct same-sex marriages, but they wanted to use their leverage to stop civil institutions conducting civil marriages in register offices. Well, I'm really glad and proud to say that those faith leaders were out of touch with most people of faith in this country, because the opinion polls showed that over 50% of people of faith supported equal marriage. Over 50%. Wonderful, fantastic. It shows that the grassroots of faith organizations, the grassroots of believers in this country, do support the principle of equality. They say discrimination is not a religious value. And if you look at every faith, how can you reconcile discrimination against anyone with faiths that proclaim love and compassion? What I find so strange is that I and many people in the LGBT community have gone out of our way to defend people of faith when they have suffered persecution. You may be familiar with the various street preachers who've been arrested and even convicted for simply saying that homosexuality is wrong and immoral. I've defended them. I've opposed their prosecution. I disagree with them, but they have a right in a free and democratic society to express their point of view without being criminalized. And it's shocking to me that people like the street preacher Harry Hay were actually convicted for simply saying that homosexuality is immoral. I defended Sir Iqbal Sakrani, then the General Secretary of the Muslim Council of Britain, when he denounced gay people as immoral and a risk and danger to society. I opposed his prosecution because he has a right to make that point of view. Sadly, such support for the principle of human rights for all is not, in many instances, reciprocated by the leaders of faith organizations. They have wanted and sought privilege, and they've got it. We have some fantastic equality laws in this country, but they all have limited qualified exemptions for faith organizations. Not just places of worship, but faith-run schools, hospitals, and nursing homes. They have written into the equality laws the right to discriminate if it goes against their religious ethos. They can sack someone or refuse to employ them if they believe hiring them, say, for example, because of their homosexuality, goes against their religious ethos. I think that is wrong. I think in a democratic society, we should all be equal before the law. And just as much as faith people should not suffer discrimination, nor should anyone else. Thank you.